Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To some of y'all, and peace out to the rest of you. The blackest hearted, blackest minded, blackest man on social media, signing black in and shining again, asking you to hit the share button because the message is more important than the messenger. Now, this is one of the rare times I'm going to address sisters. In this case, I'm addressing specifically the lighter skinned sisters that form online light skinned communities. Oftentimes, they're also calling for a separate racial categorization offline as well. In other words, separate communities offline for race mix, light skin, ambiguous Creoles of various percentages of African admixture, but not uncontroversially black. Look, first, let me say this about that call. I'm neutral about it at this point for two reasons. One, I know that the U.S. has changed a lot since I left 7 years ago. As a matter of fact, what teenagers have to go through has changed since I was last a teenager. Oh my, a generation ago. Almost. So I understand that maybe it's different. Maybe what you all grow up having to deal with is different from what I had to face when I was your age. Well, when I was a teenager, I should say. But that segues into the other point. There are things that I do know. And another reason that I'm neutral about it, meaning I'm not against it and I'm not for it, I guess I'm going to let you all decide, is that I come to realize as well that without hatred, there are many people on the paler end of the spectrum calling for it, not because they hate the rest of the race, but because they feel unwelcomed. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, there are many who are calling for it without hatred, but because they know that frankly, those of us on the paler end of the spectrum are getting a raw deal at times. On one hand, you just the N-word, you ain't nothing special. And on the other hand, see, that cop didn't beat you up because you pale. I understand. And they understand. And as an example, I'm going to use two people who can't stand me. But that's part of why it is, and I'm going to listen to what it was that they said and not how they felt about me, because they did not hate the race as a whole. Well, some people said a non-black man did, but he didn't hate the race. He hated porch monkey, spear chucker, idness culture. And I'm with him 200% on that. If he thinks he hates it, he doesn't know how much I hate it. I actually believe that certain things we take for granted should be punished by death. I just haven't gone into it that much, but I do believe in that. Absolutely. Some things should be punishable by death. And we think they're just absolutely normal. For me, bullying should be punishable by death once the bully is of childbearing age. Pubic hairs, in other words. And they bully someone smaller than them. And I don't mean verbally disapprove of and tease, but if they actually either use violence or threaten violence against someone smaller than them, death, execute them, get rid of them. That's it. Just as an example. But that's another recording for another day. Because it's that bad in our community. It's that bad in many communities. I just don't care about the others. I care about ours. Next. Because of what I do know, I can't say, no, we can't do that. And, that's just evil and bad. No. Because of what I know, we absolutely have to. We don't have a choice. Sorry about the noise, but I just trapped a fly. He's going to die of starvation. And I don't care. That's another recording for another day. So the next reason, though, that I am not for or against it, as I was getting to, is that, see, a non-black man does say that if you're on the paler end of the spectrum, he knows, as someone of abundant melanin count, that there will never come a day when we get fair treatment trying to belong to the community. And light skin motivation without any hatred of any particular shade, obviously, evidenced by her choice in a husband, still said we're never going to get a fair shake. So since both people at both ends of the spectrum who tend to analyze this come to the same conclusion, I don't have a leg to stand on to go against it. I would say in the event that we're going to do this, we must not lie and say that we're not related to the rest of the race at all. We're just a subcategory within it because of the lack of recognizability, visually speaking, and because it's just not fair to the rest of the race that they be used as a dumping ground when other races may not do that. So that's why I don't argue for or against it. I would need more info. In any case, I would not call for a violent separation because I'm not for intra-racial violence. But more importantly, I open up this recording because light-skinned women, I wanted to tell you why it is that I don't necessarily jump into you all's debates in order to offer you a defense, nor do I side with those who speak against you. Here's why. Even though I don't tell men to just jump to the defense of any random woman they don't know every time they see something bad happening, because you know what, they may actually need to preserve themselves to defend the women to whom they're responsible, i.e. daughters, mothers, wives, cousins, nieces, that's aunts, that sort of thing. The fact is that I'm actually willing in many cases to take up for, I shouldn't say many, but I'm actually willing in certain cases to defend you. But I don't tell other men to do it because I don't want to advise other men to walk into what could be a bad deal for them. Now, yesterday, one man was talking on YouTube and he cracked some jokes about Sonya Curry and Aisha Curry from light-skinned women playing these games. I know this guy, and he'll joke about anybody, light or dark. So I didn't get on his case because while I don't think it's okay to joke like that, he at least is fair enough to where he will tease dark-skinned women, light-skinned women, women in the middle. He'll tease short or tall women. He'll make jokes about anybody, and men too. So I really couldn't say he singled anyone out, and bias is not acceptable to me like that. Outside of your personal rights and discretions, I don't allow bias. There was someone in the chat. I don't know this person. I've never heard him talk, but he felt comfortable saying in the chat certain things about how Sonya Curry and Aisha Curry's behaviors were related to their shade. And I said to him, no, sir, cut that out. That's not why they act like this. It's because they're Western raised women in a feminist environment that condones their behavior. And that's really talking about Aisha's, because when it comes to Sonya's, I'm not assuming that she did what Dell said. It doesn't really matter. But what people are saying that Sonya's doing and what we've seen Aisha do are not based on the shade. I know that. I understand that. It's just like my savagery is not related to my shade, nor are my sensations of fear in the face of certain things related to my shade, or my hair texture for that matter. And so when you were blamed for things that you did not do, and I know that that's what's going on, I don't mind personally speaking in defense of you and not even telling you that I did it, because that's just the right thing to do. But I'm not going to sit up and tell other men, specifically the men you like the least, to come to your aid or to come to your verbal defense in an online social media argument that's not really that important anyway. Now, in person, on the job, in a church, or in a face-to-face setting in which you are being slandered behind your back or to your face for things that we know you did not do, the right thing to do is to say you didn't do it. But that's the right thing to do for any man of any shade. And that's the right thing for any man of any shade to do for any lady of any shade, and vice versa for any lady of any shade to do for any man of any shade. So as a general principle of defending those accused of things you know for which they're innocent, yes, I'm willing to launch those defenses. I don't mind. But by the same token, we have to remember something else too. This online stuff is not what's important. It's what you face in your day-to-day lives. And I've already said before that you should not have to face it, and where you can find defense, you go ahead. So, don't confuse me telling men not to approach you with me telling them to join others against you. It is simply a question of, are we invited? And I'm gonna tell you this, it is insulting as hell if you sit up and think that you can invite men to defend you and they're not related to you. But then you tell that same man, you stay your butt over there. When when your nature rises, stay over there. I don't want you. You're not a real man. I'm going to go back over here to this man that I'm gonna go back over here to this man from whom I was trying to get you to feel like you needed to defend me. Evidenced by how? Light skin motivation did in fact launch the critique that lighter skinned men don't defend lighter skinned women or approach them or start families with them. Guess what? Look at her husband. She's allowed to marry him. It's okay if she prefers him, but she didn't even have the decency to tell us up front that she met her husband before all of this and she wasn't going to leave him because of what she now knew because he didn't deserve it and all that. But in the future, she didn't even have the decency to say that. She said nothing about it till somebody put that out there for her. Even she did not choose an LSM with whom to be and marry and live. Do you see where I'm going with this? So she wanted, she already has a defense. She's chosen for, outside of her family, she's chosen for a DSM to come to her defense, and that's fine. Truth be told, his presence, because of stereotypes in our minds, might mean that she never even needs any defense because his presence might be alone. That's a possibility. And I hope that, of course, she never needs it. I hope she's never in danger, especially now with the baby. But the point I'm making is, well, you get the idea. I'm simply saying that this is the overarching reason. The other reason, okay, so we've gotten one. I'm willing to, but I can't sit up and tell other men that they have to. Two, most of this is social media. I'm not going to sit up here and tell men to waste their time electronically trying to defend you, but rather I would be willing to do so electronically if I've got the time and, face-to-face if it came to that. In other words, you need to focus on your face-to-face safety, not your digital safety, your online safety. Thirdly, and this is important, we men are not aware necessarily, most men, and they're listening to me in the audience because my audience is usually men. This is a rare instance in which I'm addressing you. Most men of any shade do not know what you're facing. We don't know everything that you all say about each other. So whatever colorism or anti-reverse or whatever you want to call it, whatever these debates you all are having based on shade and phenotype and hair texture are usually between you ladies, and we men have jokes. Normally we may crack jokes about this stuff, but we can take it as well as we give it. So we have different ways of even understanding this thing. So light-skinned ladies, and I'm not talking to those of you that insult dark-skinned women either. If that's what you're doing, then you've already defended yourself. Y'all are even. But to those of you who don't do this, and yet you get insulted based on your phenotype, let me speak to you right quick. When you and other ladies are going at each other's throats verbally and all this other stuff, most of us aren't even in your spaces to know. And when I say most of us, do I mean LS men or black men in general? I'm talking about men in general, don't really know. Because we don't feel comfortable invading your spaces like this, even digitally and electronically. And face to face, when you're in the living room and y'all start doing this, we don't think it's okay for us to be there unless you tell us. I'll use J Cash as an example, only as an example. Shout out to him. I'm merely saying, he said that he has a sister. They both got similar phenotypes. It doesn't stop her. She can find dates and she can be treated equally to other women and all that good stuff. And so dating to her seems real easy. She'd understand the difficulty he would go through if he was going to try. She'd understand the difficulty he faces just in conversations with coworkers and things like that, let alone trying to date and be with him and all that. She doesn't get it. Now, let's say that she's facing debates and insulting matches and verbal sparring matches based on her shade and her phenotype and her hair texture and all that. Now, if this happens digitally, she probably may not tell him. And if this happens face to face, he's probably not in the same room because there's going to be ladies there. Do you think that he would be invited to sit down while the ladies have their conversations? No. There you go. Unless she is told that somebody backbit her or she's insulted to her face and then she informs him, how's he going to know? Now, these are siblings. This is a normal situation for siblings. So what do you think I'm going to know about what you, who are not my siblings, face between other women? And am I even allowed to interfere in that case? Well, see, that's different. Now, when it comes to the men, a lot of men don't sit up here, and it's rare. I've heard a few men sit up and say things about how different shades of women view themselves and therefore act. But just sitting up and just really going off, it's rare. And even then it's on social media. In real life, nobody does that to me, in front of me. So a lot of times we don't know what you're talking about when you say y'all need to defend us. We don't know the context that you have in your mind. Because for us, we have jokes, and jokes are allowed. We don't mind that between us men. As long as the one joking can take it as well as they give it, then it's jokes. And of course, as long as you know each other well enough. Now, I don't know someone and they started on this. Do you see? Then it may be time to go ahead and throw down. Because if I retaliate based on their phenotype, everyone's going to gang up on me. And this is a valid concern. However, by the same token, as an adult, I rarely face this. I don't face it, actually, and I haven't since adulthood. And that's where it's different from us and from you. So you may feel abandoned when, in fact, your situation is not really known. Now, there are men that are in your spaces, i.e. brown and beige community. The one who drew my attention to some things I did not know previously. When I recorded the first two about what Kwame Brown was saying about Matt Barnes and DJ Envy, I didn't know everything that he put in the video subsequently. Shout out to him for informing me on that. Now, to be honest with you, there are some men that are in these spaces, and they may know what you're talking about because they're in your spaces digitally. They may know, but most men in general of any shade don't know. Black or white, for that matter, or anything else. They don't really know. And so that's when I was trying to get you to understand. I didn't really find out about how bad it was for some of you all till 2019. Now, I was familiar with the space by 2017. 4 years ago, I began to get familiar with this. But I mean, when I say this space, I'm talking about, Black manosphere and red pill awareness and all that. And I'm specifically Black men's point of view on red pill awareness. I knew about that 2017. 2019 is when I started to realize these talks that you all were having about colorism, shadism, and everything else, and your complaints. I didn't know about that until 2019. That's real. And so at no point did I want to do you injustice. I did not want to shortchange you nor give you too much. So I listened. I was familiar with some of the jokes on YouTube, the videos that the comedy team put out about fighting light skins versus dark skins and, breaking up light skins versus dark skins and job searches, light skins versus dark skins. And they chose a medium, kind of light brown fella to play the so-called dark skin. And, I saw those, and those were jokes. I kid you not. They were funny. I actually sent them to my daughter, who at that time, she would have been about 11 or 12 at that time, because they were just funny. But she knew they were jokes. She's mature enough to understand these were jokes. This is social media. It's not real life. So when we men see things like this, we may not react to that because we don't detect that it's really that serious, to be honest with you. And it may not be. And so your experience with it is different from ours, because our experiences with this, our serious health-threatening experiences with this, tend to stop with our childhoods. Last time I had to fight about this, I was 18. I was down not just to my last semester, I was down to my last few weeks of high school. Maybe 6 weeks left of high school. Last time I had to fight about this. And even it wasn't really that clear. For all this time, that's what it had been about. The fight was on a Thursday. I remember that. Friday, Saturday, or Friday, I was suspended. I was suspended Monday too. But Sunday, I went to the house of some of the guys that had covered my 6 o'clock, my 3 and my 9, so that I could not be snuck up on. I went to thank some of them at their houses, because we didn't have cell phones back then. Guess what? It was one of them that told me what the fight had been about. Why it was that CJ, we'll say that that's his name. Why it was that CJ felt comfortable starting an argument with me and not with anybody else. Now, all I knew was I wasn't going to tolerate being treated differently anymore. He was the one that explained that it was based on this. That was in the middle of the 90s. We'll say that. That was the last time I had to deal with something like that from a dude. I mean, it were jokes when I got to college and, hey, pretty boy, but we're friends. These were really jokes. He meant no harm. The one that said pretty boy. Another one called me Cochise, in short for Geronimo, because I had long hair too at that time. So these really were jokes, and we get along fine. Everything's okay. I remember one dude, man, he was abundantly melanated, and his hair was straighter than mine. And they called him Pocahontas and Charcoal. Now, these were his friends. He had jokes about them too. Four Eyes, bulletproof glasses, things like that. He said he had another one for another one. He had one guy said this about him. He said, man, shut your silverback behind up. And they would look at him like, yo, that's racist. And he said, no, the hell it's not. He's got hair on his back and it's gray. Saw him in a gym. I thought he was going to thump his chest and roar if he got angry. So, I mean, you see, it was jokes back and forth. So I just want you to understand that we may really not understand the context of what you're getting at. And it's not that you're being abandoned. But keep this in mind, too. We also know, everybody knows, it is common understanding at this point that ladies, your shade, prefer men the opposite shade, and it's okay. But see, those of you in this particular space, light-skinned communities online and offline, or maybe you're the exception, but you have to understand that because of the rarity of your numbers, we don't know about this. Most of us don't know it exists at all. And then on top of that, if you're out and about in public, nobody can look at you and tell that that's who you are. They can't see that. It's not something they can figure out. They can't look at you and know this. So when you go grocery shopping and you've been by yourself for a long time because you ain't trying to date a man that hates himself and that's why he's picking you, and that's understandable. That's a good reason to not choose someone. Then you pass by this SLM and he seems to be single, no ring on his finger. He nods his head to say hello and keeps on going and doesn't bother you. You never even hear his voice to know what it's like, and you get mad because of that. That's not reasonable. It's not. It doesn't make any sense that you'd be upset that he's not even going to say anything to you, because the conventional wisdom, the common knowledge is that he ain't your type. And if he ain't your type like that and y'all aren't related, then he's not going to feel comfortable getting into your business. So he doesn't know anything about you might need some kind of protection or defense in the parking lot, let alone online. And so this lack of awareness of who you are and what you'd actually want and would prefer, well, I mean, come on. That's not the same thing as abandonment. It's not that at all. See, I remember the day that I finished 8th grade. The reason I remember that day was because it was the first and last time I ever walked home from my middle school. And it was a long walk. But you know, back in those days, last day of school was early. Maybe it still is. Last day of school was then, you done by 12 or 12:30 or something. And so I didn't take the bus. I walked. Now, the school was in a bad neighborhood, but it was a block and a half away from a really safe zone. The other thing too was I was pretty fast at that point. So had I been chased with an empty book bag, you weren't gonna catch me that easily. But on the way out, on the street leading out the neighborhood, I remember a former classmate saw me. He was like, "Yo, Black, what's happening?" He lived around the corner from the school, so he was already home. I walked up. I said, "How you doing, man? You been all right?" Yeah. He was about a year younger than me, I think. And so he had another year to go at that same middle school. And he said, "Man, why ain't you on the bus? You live around here?" I said, No. I told him where I lived, and he said, "You gonna walk all this way?" And I was like, "Well, I mean, it's only May right now, but it ain't too hot to do it yet. Now, another month or so, you can't do that with that humidity." I said, "But yeah, I can. It's hot outside. I can take it. It's not that bad yet. June is, we got a few more weeks left till it's really bad." And I'm wearing white slacks, light colored shirt, so it wasn't too bad. I needed the exercise. Last day of school that day. It was my last day of middle school. And I remember it was either his cousin or his sister that was on the porch. And she eyeballed me outside. She asked if I was related to them. And I said no. And then I kind of laughed because the stereotype is, the stereotype. We're all related to each other. All light skins know each other. We're related. I was like, no, actually, my parents aren't even from the Gulf Coast. And she laughed too when she said, "I figured we weren't, but I was making doubly sure. So can I get your number?" Now, I'm gonna tell y'all straight. That was the last time I was Not shocked that she asked. I was shocked that she admitted. Well, I was not shocked she wanted it. I was shocked she asked. I was shocked she admitted it. But I was thinking in my mind, will my mom even approve of this? I mean, would my mom jump on me thinking that I picked her out the crowd because of her shade? But then again, my mom would have known me a little bit better than that by this point. Anyway, what I did do was I let her have the number. I never heard from her, and that's okay. That was the last time someone that shade showed that kind of interest until I was an adult. And I didn't have to be aware of this. You understand? I didn't have to actually sit down and think about this. Subconsciously, you pick up on patterns before you pick up on them consciously. And I wasn't the only man to go through this. Now, less than 6 months later, I was in high school. And there was this lady that quite a few people were sweating. But she wasn't a freshman, and it was the freshman guys that were sweating her because they didn't know. And she had a boyfriend, of course. She was on the paler end of the spectrum, and her boyfriend was on the opposite end of the spectrum. Now, he was what you might call a pretty boy athlete. A nice guy, too. I mean, he was very well-mannered. So he wasn't a jerk at all. He wasn't haughty or arrogant. But the point I'm making is that was her type. And that was the first time I heard someone say, someone said to my friend, who was actually in the middle, "You too pale for her. You ain't what she want. Plus, she got a boyfriend." And you'll see her boyfriend, and I'm telling you, that's her type. There was a cousin that said this to my friend who was interested. And he was like, "You're going to see who she is. And, you're going to see who she's with, and that's her type." And that was the first time I picked up on that. But then, it was her. And what I'm saying is that even then I didn't think of it as a pattern, yet I'm just saying all of this to let you know that I have firsthand experience with what I'm talking about. What we learn, consciously or subconsciously, is what you prefer. So you specific individuals to whom I'm addressing that are in this space that actually do have a preference for something more similar to you on the outside, you're a minority, one. That's not wrong. It's not your fault that you're a minority. But number two, no one knows. And you're going to say, well, how are they supposed to find out if they don't come up and say nothing? Sorry. Maybe it ain't your fault, depending on your age. But Me Too already took care of that for you. All the ones that you don't want that did not approach you, you can thank Me Too for that, but this is one of the outcomes of it. And that's independent of race or complexion. Me Too was comprehensive. Calling someone a creep, even if it's not something you did, the point I'm making is that label of creep is a comprehensive label. So what men learn is whatever she does not want needs to stay the F away. That's it. That's what all these things mean. And unfortunately, what some of you don't understand is that you're not going to be an exception because you are an LS woman in these LS communities online and even offline if there are such, and you're looking for your own, or you're looking for your own phenotype. You don't understand that though it may or may not be your fault that these men are told to stay away, you got to understand that you're not going to be an exception and you're not going to be known because of this. And I'm not even blaming you for it. Especially if you were too young and you had nothing to do with Me Too and the invention of the term creep and the applications of it and all that. Yeah, okay, you had nothing to do with it, you had nothing to do with it. I'm simply saying that you're sitting up and saying how these men gonna find out if they don't say anything to us. They're not supposed to. That's dangerous. The only way for these men to know you're an exception is for you to somehow identify yourself as one. Online, many of you who are such, well, you've identified yourself already. That's how I know to address you in this audience. But you will have to find some courage to find a way to identify yourself as such offline. Because the men ain't gonna know. They ain't gonna have no idea, no clue. And frankly, a lot of you have some brainwashing. You may not be aware of it. It may be subconscious, but many of you will have some sort of brainwashing that will make you still change your mind about many of these individual guys for reasons related to this. So let's say he could be an LS man, and he wants the same thing as you. With no hatred, he may simply feel that we would never be able to fully represent the larger racial community from which we descend, and therefore we may have to have for political purposes, a separate community. Or they've been told that you should be in another community like of your own and so they think that's what's supposed to happen. But when they actually begin to accept this and internalize this, you may say to them one day, well, how is it that you came to this? And the funny thing is that you may be trying to figure out if they got picked on as a youngster, and they answer the question with, well, yeah, I mean, everybody did. And then you say, okay, well, this guy he caught the crap end of the stick, and that's why. And that's not what we need. He could simply be being honest about it, answering your question, and you detect some sort of insecurity and childhood trauma in a grown man, and that's not mature. And because let's be honest, as Western women, you are still going to over-scrutinize men. You are going to crap test men, trying to find ways to eliminate them, even if you don't mean to do it, because that's how you were trained growing up in the West. So what I'm saying is that if you really want to be able to form such communities, if that's what you're looking for and you think it's a necessity, you will also have to de-Westernize in many ways. And I don't know where to tell you to go to do that. But it is something you would have to do. You would have to look at how it is that you were trained as a Western woman, period. And you would have to be able to undo a lot of that. You would have to throw out the materialism. You would have to find out what level of materialism is even acceptable where you live. You can hate poverty, fine. There's still no guarantee you won't ever be subjected to it, because God can test, and he will test whoever he decides to with poverty or wealth, but mostly poverty. You may decide, I just need to be in the middle, that's it, I know, but then you got to know what that middle actually is. You're going to have to know what the medium height actually is. You'll have to know the difference between average, medium, and mean. Even I forgot what those are, but you'll have to know, because of what you're looking for. You're still trained to eliminate the same 80 to 93% of men that every other woman's trained to eliminate. You all are still trained, whether you know it or not, to compete with all these other ladies for the same 20 to 7, anywhere between 20 to 7% of the same 20 to 7% of men. You do not come without the issues that the rest of the Western ladies come with. I wish you did, but I can't say that you do. And whatever issues you think men have, which probably aren't really that serious, to be honest with you, because we're not allowed to really have them that seriously. I can't sit up here and tell you that LS men are going to be exceptions. But that second one is more likely than the first. An LS man is more likely to come devoid of the BS than you are to come devoid of the BS. Only because of training. I'm not even saying we're born that way. It's just training. We're not trained to think we can get away with that stuff. Remember, we're not chosen like that. Not for public consumption, I should say. When we do get chosen, and it's as side dudes, sometimes knowingly, sometimes unknowingly. And I can tell you this, an LS man is nice to look at, and it does not have a high body count, is probably going to be what you want, because that's the one that was not willing to accept being a side dude and cuckolding some other man's wife or boyfriend. That may be what you want. He's your type, not your friends, your type. And he doesn't have a high body count. That's going to be what you need to look for. And frankly, if he doesn't have one and you do, why should he be willing to be with you? There's a lot of things to consider that go beyond just us stepping up in every online argument you might find yourself in, or magically appearing in places we were previously unwelcome because now you need us. It's far beyond that. There's a lot to consider if what you're trying to do is build a community. An endogamous community. And a lot of this is not in our hands. Thank you for listening. I wanted to make this shorter, but I couldn't. I could go on, but I'll stop now. I think you got the point. It's not hatred. LS men are not sitting around hating you and got bad stuff to say about you just because. It's not like that. It really isn't. Always remember, and this is not something many of you are going to agree with me on, but the truth is still the truth. And this has been universally observed in the U.S., in the Bahamas, in the U.K., in Jamaica, in Trinidad, in Guyana, in Suriname, in Belize. It was never LS men that looked at you and said no. It was LS ladies that looked and said, you're like a play brother, you're a play cousin. You know we look like we related. I want you to introduce me to your friend over there with the muscles that be glistening under the overhead lights. Ever since 1989, that's what it's been. And it's not wrong if that's actually your thing. It just means that we need to fall back. And that's exactly what it is we've done. We're the original men to fall back and to prevent the need for the use of a hashtag #MeToo. That was us. We learned that lesson early on. You my play brother. You sit on the couch and let me and listen to me cry about what he's doing. I dare say we're probably the first ones to be really friend zoned in the numbers that we were. That's probably why it was that Shy, remember they didn't come out in 1989. That group Shy came out in 91, I think it was. Remember that. That's probably why they were singing the stuff they were singing. All right. Thanks for listening. Black Heart, Black Mind, Blackout, Assalamu Alaikum, and Black Heterosexual Non-Select Male Power, just because a lot of y'all might not like it, and Black Patriarchy. Whatever the shade, until extinction or Judgment Day.